Now, I got a question on Facebook Live that I want to address. I didn't get a chance to address the follow-up question of Jim, who asked me about whether or not I believe in evolution, and I told him I don't. I believe in microevolution, in other words, changes within kinds, but not changes from one kind to another. So Jim follows up and he says that the evolution of the whale from a land-based animal is well documented, and the evidence of the evolution of the whale from land animals is the skulls of the animals that show how the nose became a blowhole over millions of years, and then it migrated from the back to the top of the head, and these kinds of things. He goes on with the evidence, the DNA evidence, the fossil record evidence, the morphology. All of this confirms, according to Jim, that the whale evolved from a land animal. And I've actually written about that in the Creation Answer book, Jim, and others listening in. And I point out here that in The Origin of Species, Darwin speculated that bears might well evolve into whales. I see no difference, said Darwin, no difficulty, I should say, in a race of bears being rendered by natural selection more and more aquatic in their structure and habits, with larger and larger mouths, till a creature was produced as monstrous as a whale. Well, in stark contrast, Darwinians hold that hippo-like animals evolved into whales. And so I think that this is something that, unfortunately, Jim has sort of bought into, and I simply disagree. To believe that hippo-like animals evolved into whales would take an enormous amount of faith. Simply put, extant fossil transitions are scant. Yeah, I think I mentioned that originally to Jim, and as such, belief in the evolutionary development of physiological wonders like blowholes, sonar, diving mechanisms, I think takes an enormous amount of Darwinian devotion. And I would add to that, Jim, and again for everybody else, that molecular evidence appears to be at odds with fossil evidence. Fossil similarities point to hippos as first cousins of pigs, and molecular similarities position hippos as first cousins to whales. But in either case, whatever you happen to believe, it takes a substantial faith to suppose that such similarities provide an adequate basis for neo-Darwinianism. And Jim, let me make one more point. The notion that unguided, purposeless processes could transform the ears of a land-dwelling, a freshwater, a hippo-like animal into the echolocation system of a sea-dwelling saltwater whale, and that in a matter of 10 million years, takes far more faith than I am able to muster. Now, Darwin had an excuse. In his day, fossil transitions were relatively scarce. And not only that, but the science of genetics had not yet evolved. And therefore, the hip neo-Darwinian notion that a 3,000-pound hippo could evolve into, what are they, 300,000-pound whales through a series of genetic missteps is no less a stretch than a Darwinian bear evolving into a whale with a tail. So I don't think that this is, in any sense, Jim, a settled matter. I mean, people want to use that idea, that moniker, this is settled science, and so let's not end this discussion with a moniker that simply is a conversation stopper, but rather look at what it takes in an age of scientific enlightenment to believe this evolutionary fairy tale.